Legislative Committee meeting for Vallecitos Water District, Monday, January 9th at 3 o'clock. There is no public, so we'll pass on that. Broadcasting the meeting, listening to the meeting. I'll turn the time over to Glenn for the bulk of the meeting, correct?
Yep, you just turn it over to me. So we sent out a request for proposals for legal services, I think it was in November. The deadline to submit proposals was December 9th. By the deadline, we received 5 proposals. Staff had prepared a schedule, and we gave ourselves 2 weeks to review them. So James and I and Anthony helped us too, reviewed all 5 proposals by the 23rd. We came up with our recommendations, and then we set up this meeting to meet with the committee. And I guess one of the things I'm going to want from the committee is to figure out what role does the committee want to play versus what role you want the board to play. And I'll explain a little bit of that further. I didn't envision us walking you through each proposal. If you want to do that, we could probably do that at a subsequent meeting. I just wanted to give you kind of a holistic view of the proposals as we saw them. It's always encouraging when you have multiple people reviewing them and everybody sees them pretty similarly, right? There wasn't a lot of debate.
Before you go on, just a question: How are those solicited? I mean, do other legal firms know when our firm's up? Do they?
No, okay. You know, some may be more on top of it than others, but there's no database or anything out there that people go to for as far as a source. But they may keep track of things if they're aware. 5 years ago, the BB&K was awarded this. They may have put something on their calendar, said, "Hey, in 2023, Vallecitos."
But that doesn't happen usually.
Doesn't happen usually.
Okay.
But
so you reach out to a few?
We did. So we sent thank you for bringing that up. I should have been a little clearer. We sent the request for proposal out to 10 firms.
Okay.
And we compiled those. We assumed BBK had to be in that mix, right? They were an automatic. And then we looked for other firms based on reputation, other agencies they served. I had talked with some other GMs about who represented them, those types of things. And we compiled this list of 10 firms. So we sent it out. It wasn't broadly advertised. It wasn't like put in a newspaper where anybody could apply. We sent it to these 10. If some other firm outside that group of 10 had submitted, we would have accepted it. We just didn't go the route of opening it up to the world. And that's pretty common in these for solicitation of these types of services. So what I asked James and Anthony and myself to do was to look at these proposals and look at a variety of factors. Sometimes when you evaluate a proposal, you do a very rigorous point system and criteria and a lot of numbers and math involved, and we didn't do that. Again, it was more big picture and holistic. We looked at things like the experience of the firm in the water and wastewater industry. We don't care if you're a personal injury attorney in LA, that doesn't do us any good, right? We looked at the strength of the general counsel. Who is going to be the person that sits right here? What's the depth and the strength and the reputation of the firm? The breadth of the firm. Do they handle a lot of the areas we do? So if they're just a specialist in being a general counsel, that's one thing, but are they good at contracts? Are they good at human resources? Are they good at litigation if you need it? So that was a factor we looked at. Office location, are they kind of close by? You know, we don't want to have to pull somebody from LA. And quite frankly, that was how we weeded it down in the first place, where we only sent it to 10 firms. I didn't consider anybody in the LA basin. If they had an office in San Diego, and they were a firm that I thought was a good candidate, they were included. But you had to have a firm in San Diego County or Southern Orange County to really make the list.
Do they have to send counsel how often? Just each board meeting? Is there other meetings they need to attend?
They attend meetings as required. So sometimes they may come to a meeting like this. We may have a committee meeting that has a legal angle to it, and they'd be required to come to that. The attorney joined us for our strategic planning session because we wanted to get that legal perspective. So things like that, but in general, it's the board meeting it's their primary physical attendance requirement. We also looked at things like the potential for conflict. Is there something about the nature of our work that may conflict with something that they have going on in theirs? And I'll talk a little more about that as it relates to one of the firms in the evaluation. So those are kind of the general criteria. As I mentioned, we didn't set up a rigorous point system where 5 points means they're out of this world and 1 means barely. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a general feel. But I did ask Anthony and James and myself to put them in one of 3 categories. So 5 firms, and I said, put them in one of 3 categories. One is really well qualified. That's the first category. The one is moderately well qualified, but not in the same league as the first one. And the last category was no reason to consider them any further for whatever reasons we considered. So we had 5 firms that submitted, and we broke them into, and again, general consensus, we had 2 firms in the highly qualified, 2 firms in the moderately qualified, and 1 firm that we felt just, they kind of mailed it in. It felt like they pulled a RFP or a proposal off the shelf and just scratched out whatever firm and put in Vallecitos. Didn't demonstrate any attention to detail. So I'll tell you that, and that firm was called McDougall Love. So do you guys have copies of the proposals in front of you?
No.
Okay, so I'll read the list of here's the 5 proposers. It was Procopio, Devaney Pate, BBK, Atkinson, and McDougall Love. So McDougall Love is the one that we recommended, no reason to consider them any further. And I'll let the drum roll build before I tell you which categories the other 4 were in, but what I'm looking for from the committee is to say, so your role is to help us shortlist. Staff kind of went through, we threw out a wide net of 10, and if we had gotten 10, staff's role would have been to shrink it to a manageable group for the committee, and then the committee would shrink it even further for the board's consideration. Because ultimately, it's going to be the board, the full board, interviewing anywhere between 1 and 5 firms, right? And then making a recommendation. So the committee will not make a final decision as to who our legal services is, but the committee should make the recommendation to the board as to who we should interview. So that's I guess the number one request from both of you is to say, are you comfortable with only recommending the top 2 rated by staff? Or would you want to take all 4 forward to the board? And you don't need to answer that right now, but at the end, I'll be looking for that kind of a recommendation and then find out how you want to do that. So there's a risk, if the committee says, let's just interview 2, you may have one of the other 3 board members say, well, what about these other 3? Maybe we should consider them too. But I think there was general agreement when they assigned this task to the committee that the committee was going to make a recommendation. So at some point in time, and it could be as early as the meeting next Wednesday, when we have a regular board meeting, when we do report outs on committee assignments, you can make a recommendation at that point in time. So that may be a first opportunity. You may remember when I first set up the kind of a schedule for this whole process, I booked 2 meetings. This is the first of those 2 meetings. If for some reason the committee felt that you needed another meeting to go through to hash it out more, we have some time in the schedule and will still allow us to meet our overall objective, which is to get our new legal services provider under contract by the end of March of this year. Which is March 30th is when the BBK contract terminates with no provisions to extend beyond that. There are holdover provisions. If something happened and we couldn't get into agreement by March 30th, BBK would continue to provide legal services. They indicated they're willing to do so, and legally they could continue to do so. But it would be good form for us to have this resolved and have our new legal services firm on board by March 30th. So, with no further ado, I'll tell you the 2 firms that we saw in the top echelon, the ones we most highly recommend, are Procopio and BBK. So that left Devaney Pate and Atkinson as I'll say the 3rd and 4th place. There was a little disagreement between the 3 of us, Anthony, James, and myself, as to which one was 3 and which one was 4, but there was no difference of opinion whether they were in the upper level or not. So I would say we're either going to look at 2 or we're going to look at 4 candidates. It would be hard to split. No, I don't think so. It would be hard to split between this 3rd and 4th places. So I'd recommend we either interview them both or we don't interview either. So I don't think we need to talk about McDougall Love unless you wanted to hear some of the reasons. The biggest reason why they were, I'll use the word rejected, although I don't have the ability to formally reject them, but The biggest reason is they just mailed it in. They didn't show any commitment to this cause. So I don't, if that's the level.
Are they local?
They have a local office, yeah, and I don't know I don't remember where they're located, but they have a local office.
All of them are.
All of them have a presence in San Diego County. I didn't look to see how big is their local presence. Like Procopio, for example, I think their main office is elsewhere, but they have a San Diego office. BBK's probably their headquarters. I mean, I know they have a strong presence in San Diego. I don't know where else they are, but they have, these two top firms have a strong presence in San Diego County. So I have no concern about their ability to provide us support with whatever we may need. So with that, maybe just I'll go through a couple of comments. I'll go for Procopio first. And they're just listed. I have a sheet in front of me that you don't have access to, but I'm looking for it. My biggest concern with Procopio, there's two. They're a really well-qualified firm, and Director Pennock, just so you know, they are the legal counsel for the Encina Wastewater Authority, okay, which we're a member agency of. So we get a lot of interaction and we see how they operate. Craig's had represented us on Encina for a long time, so he's seen Procopio in action. They recommended, so each firm would be on the contract, but they would assign a general counsel, a Jim Gilpin, and they recommended Adriana, who is the general counsel for Encina. So she's a known commodity. She's awesome.
She stays both?
She indicated that she would stay as both.
Isn't that a
Yeah,
potential
so
conflict?
you're heading right where my biggest concern with with that selection is the conflict of interest. In their own proposal, they say they give precedent to longer-standing clients. So they said if there's a conflict between Encina and Vallecitos, they would side with Encina and they would help Vallecitos find outside counsel.
Wow, that's a big red flag.
It's a big red flag. Now, having said that, in the 6 years I've been here, and in the 15-plus years that James has had experience here, we've never had that type of a conflict with Encina Wastewater Authority.
I know, but it's.
Yeah, right, but it's there. And you've probably heard this a little in the past, but the water and the wastewater industries are merging. This whole direct potable and indirect potable reuse. And EWA is heading to a world where they're gonna start producing drinking water. And that's outside their mission, and they're gonna have to find customers. And some of their member agencies want water, drinking water, some of them don't. So there's this potential for, depending how the deal is structured and how the costs are picked up amongst Encina member agencies, there may be some conflict, which could lead to this conflict in representation. Just want you to know that. Now, to their credit, they did acknowledge that they said they understand why that could be perceived as a conflict, but they don't think it's a conflict that would preclude them from representing us. Well, of course they're gonna say that, right? I don't have anybody right now to go and ask that. BBK cannot provide me legal advice on how another firm, it would be a conflict to them. So I talked to Jim Gilpin early. He says, Glenn, I can't answer any questions about this whole process, right? Unless it's a very black and white answer. And he said, I'd rather you not even do that. Jim said he could refer us to another counsel that could provide us, help us resolve an issue with potential conflicts if the board felt that that was important. But I just wanted to bring that up. So another, I'll say negative about Procopio is their rate. So they had the highest rate for their, in the proposal, all of them gave their rate structure for like a partner, an associate, and then like paralegals and other levels. So the numbers I'm gonna quote are for their general counsel, their Jim Gilpin type, and they were billing at $3.95 an hour. BBK is at $2.95 an hour. So that's an extra $100 an hour, right? Not all of the legal advice we get is at the highest level. They, according to all of them in their proposals, they try to push it down to the lowest paid competent person that they can. Having said that, if they say, oh, this really needs the partner to look at it, who am I to say no? So I saw that as a big difference, $100 difference. It's like a, almost a 33% increase.
Do they all bill the hour, if you're talking for 10 minutes, do they do?
So we asked them in the proposals to what kind of fee structures. Most of them just bill by the hour. Some they will do a retainer structure if we want, where we kind of prepay for legal services, but they said those tend to be more complicated and they would be happy to have those discussions if they were selected. All of them indicated that they're okay with kind of either structure.
Currently for BB&K, Jim getting the most hours on a monthly basis?
If you looked at ranked order of all of them, I'd say probably not.
Probably construction.
Construction, the contract review is one of the biggest ones. We've had some personnel issues where the personnel costs, he's probably the steadiest.
Most consistent.
Yeah, most consistent number, but I wouldn't say he's the highest. And sometimes I use him kind of as my clearinghouse. If I have an issue, I'll reach out to Jim, and then I trust that he kind of farms it out within his group. Some of the staff members, they establish a relationship with, they know who the attorney is to do contract review, so they don't go through Gilpin. So if I have an issue that involves a contract, I'll go to engineering and say, hey, resolve this with BBK, and that'll go right to the contract, that'll go to Rebecca at BBK to review. The issues I involve them in are usually higher level stuff that need Jim's either direct involvement or he needs to triage it. So my first phone call is usually to Jim or Nick if Jim's not available. So I would say if you want to call them black marks, I would say the potential for conflict and the high cost were the concerns, I'll call them. Very qualified firm, great references, good clientele list. I would say they're a little weak on the water side. They're strong in the wastewater world, at least judging on their, I didn't do a lot of independent research. I did some conversations with GMs, and I did talk with Scott's the GM at Encina. I asked him about his experience with Procopio, and I looked at their proposals, but I didn't do independent analysis. I wasn't doing Google searches or anything like that.
Scott think of
He spoke very highly of them.
and of her?
In her in particular, he says, because
She really impressed me. They
Yeah.
proposed on, or she applied for the, I wouldn't say proposed because it's an employee of the Water Authority.
oh, she did.
She applied for that job and she
Yeah.
presented herself very well.
No, she's really strong, very
She didn't
straightforward.
have any experience whatsoever in the things that they needed most.
Yeah.
But she really was impressive.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that she could come up to speed on all
Yeah.
those things,
I
but
actually voted for her. I
Yeah.
thought she was great.
Yeah.
I was one of the few that did.
yeah. But I would say her and Procopio in general have a demonstrated lack of strong water involvement, but good municipal governance. So they say, hey, we have a deep bench, we have people that are water experts. Adriana would be more the overall, and she would probably do a fine job. So I don't mean to belittle Procopio, they're a super strong firm. And they do have a local office. Let's see, Devaney Pate, they probably had the lowest rate. They were at $260 for their partners. They had, I would say, moderate amount of water and some wastewater experience. Most of their experience was with cities, not special districts. So when I say they have water and wastewater experience, typically it was a department of a city. So like, City of Escondido, for example, they have their own water department. It's not a special district. So they worked for a city that had experience with water and wastewater issues. A lot of that is relevant, some of it isn't relevant.
What cities do they?
I don't remember. If you'd like, and that's, if you need a second meeting and you have some questions and I can feed you more information, happy to do that. I couldn't see any conflict potential. They recommended their general counsel be a gentleman named Richard Romero. They appear to be a full-service firm, could probably help us in all the areas that we need help. I think they have good general experience. They do have a San Diego office. They have represented Otay Water District in the past. James used to work there, but they weren't the general counsel when James was there. That would have been helpful if they had been, but they weren't.
Being, quote, full service, is that within their organization or do they contract out?
No, they claim it's within their, here's what almost all of them say this: we think we can handle every issue, and if we can't, we have the connections to get whatever.
That's what kind of concerns me.
Yeah.
A lot of times it isn't actually internal.
Yeah, and that's the good thing of, the good and the bad thing for BBK is they're a known commodity. The good thing is that we know that they've had the depth to handle virtually every issue that we've ever thrown at them. They haven't had to go find another attorney, then structure a deal, then develop our confidence level with them. They have a deep bench. Procopio has a deep bench. I just don't know Devaney Pate quite as well. They did offer what they called a 50% travel time charge for one meeting per week, which means most places charge you portal to portal. So if BBK was gonna, if our attorney was gonna support our meeting from their San Diego office, they would bill you for the time they took to drive here, bill you for the time here, bill you for the time to get back to their office. So, yeah, it's portal to portal is what they bill. This firm, Devaney Pate, said we'll only charge you 50% for the travel time portion of the meetings, but only for one meeting a week. So, but it was something. And they brought that up because we basically had something in the proposal or the RFQ that said, give us any added value. If there's something your firm is willing to do that adds value. Just for your information, one of the things, and I don't know if it was a deciding factor on why we picked BB&K, but they agreed to waive the travel time charging for this one. So when they come to a meeting, it's on their dime. Part of it's because I think Gilpin lives up this way, and he says he'll either be coming from his house or going home instead of back to the office. That was a value-added thing they gave us 5 years ago when we entered into the contract with them. They didn't indicate, and I'm talking about BBK, we're not on them yet, but they didn't make the same offer as part of the proposal. But remember, the proposal evaluation will help us down list, a short list, and then we'll do interviews, select a firm, and then we negotiate. So there's still an opportunity in the negotiations to say, okay, we like you, but we have some concerns. So, and seeing as this is recorded, we don't want to get into strategy and costs and things like that, but just so you know, what we do today isn't a final decision. Even what the board decides, even when they select somebody, isn't the final contract you're gonna see. There's still some negotiation.
Technically, you can't select based on price alone.
Yeah, it's a professional services, it's not supposed to be on price alone, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with the difference between like a contract service and a professional services arrangement, but, yeah, and the last comment on Devaney Pate was no current special district general counsel experience. So I think they have some current special district experience, they're just not the general counsel at any special districts currently. And that may sound similar, but when I say general counsel, I'm talking about a person, the person that sits there, not the firm. So their firm has special districts as customers, just no general counsel experience. So BBK, really strong in water, moderately strong in wastewater. They've got enough depth there. I would say they're at the mid-range amongst these firms in price. They represent 6 water districts in San Diego County. I saw that as good. They claim there's no conflict. I would tend to agree, but who knows if we may go to battle with another water district over something in the future.
Yeah, we ran into this up at Rancho where BB&K was ours and Elsinore, I think Elsinore and Western, or maybe it was just Western Municipal had them.
Yeah.
But we got into a groundwater issue.
Yep.
That got pretty awkward because
Yeah.
we had the same law firm.
So we looked at those types of things. James and I had that conversation. We don't foresee any readily identifiable potential conflict. For example, we don't share a groundwater basin with any of the agencies that they represent. There's no surface water body that provides water to all of us. There's bigger picture issues that we all benefit from. We all benefit from the Colorado River and from Metropolitan and the Water Authority. So we're strange bedfellows, right? There's always a slight potential, but there's nothing immediate. You may find out that some of the agencies that they represent may want to buy water from Encina when they start producing water. Okay, then there's going to be there's going to be contracts and agreements and legal wranglings, and at that point in time, we may need to figure it out. I think that's 10 years away.
Yeah, there's a detachment issue too, but I think there's several degrees removed as far as potential.
Yeah. So, and those would be good questions to ask in an interview to say, hey, how would you, from a conflict perspective, how would you represent Vallecitos in the coming detachment issues with Rainbow and Fallbrook?
I don't see that as a big issue.
Yeah. I don't think any firm can say there's absolutely zero potential for any conflict ever.
I think they, and I think most firms do a good job of if they have multiple clients that they represent and, and different general counsels for each of those, that they pretty well segregate and don't discuss things.
Yep.
I'm pretty confident they and others do that.
Right.
I mean, do you know who Vista, Carlsbad, Liebenheim, you know who they use?
Yeah, so Leeuwenhoek uses Nossaman. Carlsbad has internal counsel. Vista has, they have an internal city attorney. I don't know if they use them for any, Vista doesn't have a water department. Vista Irrigation does the water. Vista does have wastewater, so, and I don't know if they use a special counsel for their wastewater legal issues. Yeah, but of the firms that BBK currently represents, I didn't see anything that was a likely immediate conflict of interest.
Padre Dam and
Yeah, so there's Padre,
Fallbrook.
yeah,
They represent about 6 districts in
Six.
San Diego County.
yep.
I think Santa Fe Irrigation.
Yeah, Santa Fe, Padre, yeah, you know most of them, and Rancho, California, but that's outside of our county, but, let's see, they have, so one positive for BBK is experience with Vallecitos. You know, clearly that's good. They have very deep and broad experience. And so it's not just the depth, but it's the breadth of the experience they have, all the different
How long
facets
have
of
they been
law.
with us?
5 years.
And who did we have before?
So it was a small firm, it's called Jeff Scott and Associates, I think was their name. 3-person firm in Escondido or Rancho Bernardo, I think
Yeah,
Rancho
Rancho
Bernardo.
yeah.
So, and the district had them for 37 years.
Really?
Yeah, and that was, at the time, that was a point that several board members made. It's been too long with the same firm. We need to see what else is out there. And that kind of led us to actually adopt an ordinance that said any professional service that is in excess of over $100,000 per year should be evaluated at a minimum every 5 years. So that's why we limited BBK to a 5-year term. In the terms of BBK's current agreement was for an initial 3-year term and 2 1-year extensions. They're in the second and final extension right now.
So in the RFPs, did we ask for the same structure?
We didn't get into any detail on that. We did indicate that it would be we're looking for a multi-year arrangement. I think we mentioned, may or may not have mentioned the ordinance that says we have to solicit. We didn't want anybody to think that we were dissatisfied with Best, and Krieger, so I think we structured it in a way that said our ordinances indicate we go through this process, which may have turned some firms away. They may have said, oh, they're just checking a box. They're doing it because they have to, not because they are really gonna solicit new firms. There were some firms that called up and said, are you really looking for a new thing, or is this just checking a box? They said, hey, we're interested, you know, if you submit a proposal. Some well-qualified firms did not submit. Nossaman's an example, and there's a couple others that I wish would have submitted, and they chose not to, probably because they're thinking they're not gonna upset or unseat BBK. They didn't tell me that, but the fact that they didn't submit, maybe they were too busy, I don't know. But, so, let's see, what else do I have on BBK? We do have some ongoing and foreseeable litigation in the future that it's always helpful to have some continuity going forward. So we have the city of San Marcos has a big project with their Creek District project. You're probably aware of it. We have a lot of involvement in that. There's indications that there may be legal wranglings ahead. So, but whether that's a reason to keep some, they haven't started yet, so it's not like we would lose a lot of background if a lawsuit got filed after the change. And I think it was a very thorough and well-crafted proposal. All of the firms that submitted to some degree or another really stressed diversity in their workforce and in the workplace. So that, I think that's a growing trend, acknowledging diversity in the workplace. So it seemed like whether it was just that's something new or they just all thought it was important for Vallecitos, I don't know why, but they all did make comments about diversity. All right, so the last of the 4 firms that are in the upper 2 levels is Atkinson. They had pretty good water experience, decent wastewater experience. They're a little bit more expensive. Their rate for their partners was $3.25 compared to BBK's $2.95, which I'll kind of call the baseline. I didn't see any San Diego agencies. So we'd be kind of, and I don't know that San Diego's water issues are significantly different than other special district water issues throughout the state. But if you have to assign points or preference to certain issues, I think local experience.
Where were their clients? Orange County?
Yeah, and LA and like north. It was mostly central and northern is my recollection. They did not identify any conflicts. They named, their general counsel was Rob Anslow from the Irvine office. I don't know Rob. Oh, by the way, BBK did put Gilpin forward as their general counsel. And he's the general counsel to 3 agencies, so and he's in the San Diego office. Atkinson appears to be a pretty full-service organization. They really stress their contracting side. I think there's more strength in contracting than in other areas, but they stressed it pretty strongly. They mentioned their travel cost, their billing does include portal to portal, a lot of construction references. No wastewater was really identified. It referenced 2 names, but when they started going into more depth, they didn't draw on any of their wastewater experience. And they had some moderate recycled water experience. They represented agencies that had a recycled water program. So I think they're more familiar with recycled than the wastewater issues, but they're probably strongest in water, I would say. And if it's okay with the committee, I won't even go in any depth with McDougall Love, and if you'd like to hear my thoughts, I'd be happy to give them, but I'm sure, Craig, you've probably gone through that in your life where you read a proposal, and it's like, they didn't really put much energy and attention to it. So, any questions so far?
That was a very good summary.
Thanks. So, based on Anthony and James and myself, I think it's pretty clear that there's two, and there's 1, so let's stop talking about the 1, and maybe I can hear your thoughts about the 2 and the 2. I'm not asking you to split between who was 1 and who was 2 and who was 3 and who was 4. If you want to, I'll give you my opinion, but the 3, 4 was different than what Anthony and James may have seen. But I think 1 and 2 were pretty strong, and I think it was BBK 1 and Procopio 2 from just a proposal evaluation perspective. So I guess what I'm looking for from the committee is, are you prepared to recommend to the board that we interview 4 firms, 2 firms, 5 firms?
Yeah, I guess my feeling is interviewing the top 2 isn't enough firms. To me, 4 is.
It's too much?
I think the sweet spot would be to interview 3, but
Yeah.
since you really couldn't split between 3 and 4, I would lean toward being more conservative and just interviewing 4.
Okay.
All 4, but.
It's funny, I had the exact same thoughts. I just think I'd like the top 3. But if you, like you said, I would be interested, because I don't know. I mean, I'd like to interview the Procopio and BBK, but this Devane and Pate intrigued me a little bit. Even though they don't have any district experience, they have city district, but I don't know, for some reason, what you said about them, just kind of, I'd like to hear their take.
If the committee wanted, I could meet together with Anthony and James, and we can try to figure out, can we come up with a 3rd clear one? My recollection, I'm looking at my score sheet alone, I had Devaney Pate number 3. I think either James or Anthony, I can't remember which, had them 4, and had the other as 3, and I can't remember if there was a 2-1 which way, but it wasn't unanimous for the 3 and the 4 is my recollection.
Yeah, I guess, again, my preference would be 3, but not a big deal to do 4, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think
but
I think we're united on that.
I'm hearing a lack of comfort with 2.
Yeah.
Okay,
I just, for
Yeah.
transparency
yeah,
and perception, public perception, I want to.
okay,
Almost because we're interviewing 1, because BBK is already there, so it's almost like we're interviewing Procopio, even though,
yeah.
so that's why I feel like,
Right, it's not enough,
It's
it's
not
just
enough.
the
Yeah.
top 2.
one to compete against
So,
BBK.
at the end of the day, it's just time, right? It's how much time that you want to commit.
I mean, is that a long day? I mean, how much time is one?
I would
firm
schedule an hour and a half for each firm.
for each?
Yeah, I would.
Really?
Yeah, so it won't take a full hour and a half probably, but it's a good solid hour, probably hour and 15 minutes. You don't want to rush it. You want to give it the time that it's due.
Probably like an hour for each and 15 minutes.
Because
to
you'll
talk
want
in
to,
between.
you'll want to talk after. You'll see a candidate, the candidate will leave, and while it's fresh in your mind, you're going to want to
I think
kind of,
that's what we did the last time.
yeah, you're going to want to discuss it while it's fresh, and that's why you don't want to say, send them out and bring the next one in right away. Then they start to blend together.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had the experience of looking at new houses and you go look at 10 different tracks in a
Yeah.
day, and pretty soon they all look the same, and you can't remember which one had the cool billiard room
Well, it seems
upstairs.
like we need to look at three, because BB&K, we already know. I mean, do they do a full proposal even though we've been with them?
They did. To their credit, they didn't mail it in. They treated this how they should have treated it, just like I'm looking for a job
Yeah,
here.
I think, just knowing Jim, I've known him for 20-some years, he doesn't mail things in.
No,
He
they
takes everything seriously.
very seriously, and it's clear that they want this, so. But, having said that, so if you figure an hour and a half per, you can get it done in a day. If the board wanted to devote a whole day, that's 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, or it could do 2 half-days. My there's no good way to do it. It's, one day is a lot, that's a long day, 8 hours of interviewing we interview people here a lot, and sometimes we'll have 10, 12 candidates in a day, and they're just getting ground through. This would be a bit different experience.
They're an
but,
hour each, it's 4 hours, and you're using 5 hours. Huh.
Yeah, so plan on 8 hours, either 2 half-days or 1 full day. That's the next logistical problem, is trying to get something on all of your respective calendars. But let's not worry about that right now, but from a planning perspective, figure 4 hours or 2 hours per firm, I would say, overall, from just a calendaring perspective.
Okay. I think we're united on the feel of, we actually had the same feeling. 3 would be great, but if we can't narrow it down, then 4 is gonna have to do, but 2's not enough.
Yeah.
Pretty much it.
I don't know if it'd be worth one more, getting your heads together on trying to find a clear winner between 3 and 4.
Yeah, if the board's, or the committee's desire is to have the review committee get back and just to try to maybe get a tiebreaker between those 3 and 4.
Did you feel one affinity towards either Devane and Pate and Atkinson?
I was pretty much even, I was kind of even just from what I've heard, but.
Yeah, and Anthony, feel free to speak up. I don't know if you have a good recollection of how you evaluated those 2 firms.
I don't have my notes with me,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was very similar this way. I was gonna say, I have 2 copies of the proposals here, if we wanna go through those 2, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they both have a couple disadvantages to me, but they kind of
Yeah.
even out.
So from a time management perspective, I'm meeting with President Hernandez at 4, so I still have time, but I just I have a kind of a hard stop there. We can do a couple of things. One is we can leave you with the proposals, and you can do some of the work yourself. That's one option. Or you can kick it back to staff, and we can come up and say, hey, we got back together, and we think if you want 3, we think this is the 3rd firm that you should interview. Or you can do 4. It's your call. And again, remember, yours is just gonna be a recommendation to the board. The board may say, no, we really just think 2's enough. You may hear that, but I just want to clarify what the committee's role is. It's to make a recommendation to the board as to how to move forward. And what I do plan to do, and whether it's at the end of today's meeting or a second committee meeting, is to get back to these 5 firms and let them know, like for this McDougal Love, probably tell them thanks but no thanks. And the other ones we can say, hey, you're kind of a short list, and we'll be going to a board meeting for a recommendation. Because it's always tough to be on their end and waiting, where's it at?
Yeah, I guess personally for me, I don't want to get into the weeds and dissecting individual proposals.
Okay.
Leave it to you guys, if you can come up with a clear
Okay.
3rd versus 4th.
Would that help you to get a clear 3rd?
Yeah, I mean, I feel it's funny when you speak, it's like my same.
Yeah.
He's taking my words out of me. It's like, man, I was gonna use the word weeds. I don't wanna get in the weeds either.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, my top 3 would be Procopio, Devane and Pate, and BBK. I would love to hear from those 3 again. But I'm good to have the 4th Atkinson or Atkinson in place of Devane and Pate. But
Okay.
me personally, when you were reviewing those, I felt, I'd like to hear from those 3.
Okay. Well, let us sharpen our pencils and.
And if Atkinson comes in as a 4th, then that's a 4th for me. That's fine with me.
Yeah. Are there any particular areas that most concern you? So I mentioned we didn't go through a rigorous criteria and scoring process, but are there things, is it like what's going to be your tiebreaker? Is it the potential for conflicts, or is it their rate, or is it their water experience versus their wastewater experience? Is there anything in particular that we could put more emphasis
I'll
on?
let you go first, so I don't take words. I keep stealing your words.
No, my 3, I mean, his is probably different on this one. His is probably conflict of interest. Mine more so was the rate and the experience. But the experience, that's why Devane and Pate, district and city, I could see how those could, I don't know, experience in the city could actually lend to helping us in the district side too. But that's what, the rate and the experience, those are two top ones
Okay.
for me.
Yeah, I saw their lack of special district experience as a negative,
Yeah, and it could be.
but, you know, they may bring other things, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I'd like to see that a firm is truly full service and not
Okay.
just, you know, saying that they are.
And not just go get a hired gun every time you need somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's the way Jeff Scott was. And,
Yeah.
you know, he would make pronouncements on things that I knew weren't right.
Yeah.
You know,
How do you argue with your general
how do you
counsel?
argue with the guy and order him to go get a special counsel to argue, you know, it was an awkward situation.
There's a comforting feeling to have a good, full-service
It
firm
really
representing
is, there's a lot of value to it.
Yeah,
And it seems like all four of these are.
I think so. I think varying degrees, but I think
Right.
all of them I would consider a full-service firm, some more than others. But we'll take those thoughts, we'll look back through it and see if collectively we can come up with a clear 3 versus 4.
Do
If
all
we
four-
can't, if we're
well,
still deadlocked.
So between actually Devane and Pate and Atkinson, both of them are San Diego? Both of them have representations?
Yeah, I believe they both have, so for Atkinson, the person who would be general counsel is in their Irvine office.
Okay.
So just to be clear, I think they have a San Diego office, but the person who would be general counsel would come from
We
their.
went through this
And they're-
5 years ago when we interviewed everybody, and Procopio had a guy that was gonna travel from Irvine or somewhere, and it really turned us off.
We had one that was in LA. It was an LA office and
And
we're
that's a
like,
portal one?
well, I'm just talking about our last experience. It
Right.
was an LA office. It's like, wow, if you need
Maybe
somebody
that
to
was-
get
maybe
down
that
here
was
for a
the guy.
meeting.
They brought him, and he kept saying, oh, no, it won't be a problem. Well,
Yeah, it's a problem for us.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Well, it's a fee problem too.
yeah.
If it's porter to porter, we're paying them $300 an hour.
Yeah, so, but those are great questions for an interview to say, hey, it looks like you're up in the Irvine office and we have meetings and we may need you to come down here at short notice or for multiple meetings a week. We're concerned about the cost impacts. And that may be where they say, well, we'll offer to waive the portal-to-portal costs. That's up to them, the proposal they make, or we do it in the negotiations. But it's a good time for us to express our concern to them on the fly in an interview, see how they respond to it, because it kind of puts them on the spot to commit to something they may not have wanted to commit to in a proposal. Yeah, I can't find the,
So hopefully the feedback you got from both of us is
no, it's helpful.
direction right where you, okay.
Excuse my silence for a while, I'm gonna look and see if I
Funny how
can
we both
find
just
out.
wanted 3, but.
3 sounded like a good.
So the Atkinson firm, they have offices, I'll read their offices, Cerritos, Fresno, Marin, Pasadena, Pleasanton, Riverside, Sacramento, San Diego. But the general counsel is out of an Irvine office, which isn't listed, but their main offices, I think, are in Irvine. And
But they
those
have
are-
no clients in San Diego.
That I recall.
Okay.
So remember, we kind of took this big picture, I didn't have exhaustive notes, but if there's areas of clarification you want, we can dig deeper and say, hey, we missed a couple, they had some really good San Diego experience, or we can confirm that no, they didn't really demonstrate a local experience. And then it's up to the two of you to say, how valuable is San Diego County experience versus Southern California?
And this Devane and Pate does have San Diego?
I believe they did.
I know you said no districts, but.
Yeah, mostly cities, references, special areas, full service, San
Any San
Diego
Diego
office.
cities?
I'm sorry?
Any San Diego cities represent?
Pate.
That's Devane and Pate?
So it's, so they say, in their, this is their cover letter, it says, Devaney Pate currently serves as city attorney and special counsel for cities in San Diego County with water utilities. Serves as general counsel for a mutual water company in southern Riverside County and a special counsel for a private water company. So reading between the lines, they are not the general counsel for any water districts in San Diego County, but they have a lot of water experience, but they haven't sat in the chair that Jim Gilpin sits in, being the general counsel for a water district in San Diego. So to the extent that causes you discomfort, you may devalue Devaney Pate. I don't remember with Atkinson if they were similar or not. Let's see. We're fully equipped to provide general counsel, water, environmental, construction, real property, labor and employment, yeah, nothing specific.
There's no fees for them to interview, right? We're not-
Oh, no, that's all, they pick up the cost to prepare the proposal, they pick up any costs involved in interviewing and for
I mean,
negotiations.
Proposal development isn't cheap.
No, it's not, they spend a lot of money on
Probably,
these things.
it's probably not as bad as engineering services, but it's still probably several $1,000s.
Isn't that crazy? Just the amount of money.
Yeah.
So Atkinson, I'll read you about the general counsel, Mr. Anslow. More than 35 years of experience serving as general counsel for various water districts, including advising on public financing of water, reclaimed water, and sewer facilities. I just don't remember which is, we anticipate that our Irvine office will provide the majority of services with additional resources from our San Diego offices as needed. And I don't remember if they have a list of specific San Diego County special districts. They reference that they've been a general counsel for water districts, but the fact that they don't put it front and center that, hey, we're the special district for your neighbor, that's what you'd expect them to say, to lead with, not have to filter it out. Oh, okay, here it is. Again, Atkinson, under current clients and conflict of interest. Clients within the boundaries of the district within the past 3 years include City of San Marcos, EWA Software, Kaimana Coatings, MBAR Construction, Del Mar Unified School District, San Marcos Unified School District, Community College District. So in our service area, there's just not a lot of special district, at least in the last 3 years, as they say here. And they say our firm has no conflicts or potential conflicts of interest.
Do you know what they did for the city of San Marcos?
It doesn't, yeah, it basically says they provided special counsel services. So that typically means city got involved in a lawsuit and they went and hired a law firm because it was beyond the scope of their general, or their city attorney, right? Their city attorney is kind of limited scope, and if they have anything outside that scope, they go get a special counsel. That's all special counsel means, is they're brought in for a particular.
Contracts or HR thing?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
We need to bring somebody in. So I didn't see that as being the depth and the breadth that I needed, and I think that's why I put them down at 4. But they had some strengths that Devaney Pate didn't, having said that. So they're very close, but I'm fine with James and I and Anthony getting together, refreshing our memories, looking at the areas of concern that you raised, and then we can maybe set up another meeting and try to hash out, okay, who's the last one. And I'm going to make a recommendation and ask for Anthony's help, is to see if we can do this next one in a closed session for him. Because right now this is broadcast and anyone can go listen to this, watch this, right? When we get to the interviews, that's a closed session. Those won't be open to the general public. This initial process, gray area. I'll check with BBK because they would have no conflict to opine whether it doesn't benefit them one way or the other, how it's conducted. So I think they could advise us in that. And my recommendation would be, let's do these in closed session and have BBK tell me why we shouldn't or can't do them in closed session. And I think it would help the board members and
As
council.
far as the next committee meeting?
Timing?
No, as far as.
Oh, yeah, for
being
the next-
closed session,
Yeah, for the next committee meeting, I'd like to see if we can do that as a closed session and
to decide on.
to decide, right, to
decide
that
on
final.
who to interview.
Yep. And then we've said most of it in a public setting already, but I don't think there's hundreds of people watching us. Anthony can tell right now if there's anybody viewing from the public. Doesn't mean they won't go to our website after the meeting and say, hey, I wonder what they said in that committee meeting.
I can't imagine why.
The proposers, I never told them we're going to a committee meeting on January 9th, so they don't know. They know generally, we gave them a general timeline, but the meeting's publicly noticed. If anybody's paying attention, if they submitted and said, hey, I wonder what the status is, let's check their website, they may be listening or follow up later. I didn't say anything I wouldn't say in a public setting, so I'm not worried about that, but it may help the committee and the board to speak more freely if it was protected. I know last time when we did the interviews, they were treated as a closed session. The public couldn't attend. The other firms being interviewed couldn't sit in on the other, so it was treated that way. It just, we're not there yet. So I didn't get that clarification from Best and Krieger, but we will for the next one. So you gave staff some homework to do, happy to do that. What would be a good time? I don't think it's gonna take us much time. James is busy Monday, Tuesday, today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. He's in that ICS, Incident Command, system for responding to emergencies. He's in a training class for 3 days, so it'd probably be the latter part of the week, but if maybe end of this week, beginning of next week, I think Anthony, we still have enough time in the schedule that would allow us to do that, right?
Well, and even the more you speak about it, I don't know, maybe the 4 would be, because I'd like to hear, I don't know, it sounds like I'd like to hear from,
Sure, I mean.
unless you want to narrow it down.
Well, I think I said at the beginning,
Yeah.
if there's any doubt or if you really can't split those hairs,
Yeah.
then I would lean toward being conservative and interview
Yeah.
4, so.
I can tell you what's gonna happen. When I get James and Anthony together, they're gonna tend to lean towards what I say because it's because of my position, right? And I'd rather them not be put in that position where they have to feel, oh, I'm just gonna
Speak
agree
your
with him
mind,
because it's
Anthony. You
his,
got
right?
this.
So stand your ground, Anthony. But you may, if they stand their ground, we may come back and say we're still deadlocked, right?
And that's fine with the 4.
So you're either, hey,
Hey.
can you, well, you can come in, it's an open committee
Oh,
meeting.
is this
So
a committee meeting?
this is a legal and legislative committee.
Oh, that's okay, I'll go.
You can stay if you want, you just can't participate.
We're wrapping
Yeah,
it
no,
up.
I'll go outside, sit.
Okay, so I'm hearing a little waffling. If you go to 4, if we don't need a second committee meeting, and we can help you craft the questions that may address your concerns, right? So if you have concerns about conflict, we'll include a question or two about conflict. If your concern is about rates, you can ask them, are your rates fixed, or is there some wiggle room, or do you charge transit costs? Transit costs is kind of a bit of a red herring. We don't have a lot of meetings where general counsel comes. Most of ours is behind the scenes where they're not commuting. 90%, I'm making this up, but roughly 90% of all of our legal services charges are because we send an email, they do research, they email us back. They're not driving. So it's a nice thing to dangle, oh, look at all the money we'll
That's why I
save.
asked how much.
It's just not a
Jim's
lot.
time.
Yeah, it's just not, well, even Jim's time, not all of it's here. You know,
Right.
he's doing stuff there. So I don't have a cost center code that says how much time did we save in travel? Because they don't bill us for it, but I don't know how much they would have otherwise billed for it. I could do some back of the envelope math. I could say, well, we had, make up a number, we had 30 meetings last year that Gilpin would have been here, and it would roughly be an hour and a half or 2 hours of his time, and I could do the math and tell you how much we saved through that process, if that's helpful. But I think a better way to do that is to either in the interviews or in the negotiations with whoever you select, start to pressure them. What value-added service, for example, could you waive your transit charges? One of the firms said, we'll only charge you for 50% of the transportation charges. BBK this time didn't charge us at all for them. So there's wiggle room, and there's negotiation potential here. So do you want us to do the homework, or are you okay with 4? Again, just realizing it's only a recommendation, you may go to the board and say, well, we decided to do 4, and they may say, we really want 3. They may kick it back to you.
I would say let's, just a recommendation, maybe we put it to the board that, you know, we really couldn't decide between number 3 and number 4, so we're saying interview 4, but if you, the board, wants to make a choice and then only do 3, then here's our choice for the 3rd, maybe a backup.
Yeah, let me offer this. I think the time that this could play out is next Wednesday on the 18th. By the 18th, we'll do our homework and we'll get back to both of you, not in a committee meeting, just we'll send you an email, say, hey, we got together and we did some deeper digging, looked at the areas that were important to you, and we collectively think it's clear that firm X is the number 3. Then you can take you can modify your recommendation and say, hey, we have a clear 3, let's just tell the board there's 3. If it's still unclear, then you can couch it however you want to the board. Say, hey, we tried to get it to 3, but we really couldn't. So if the board would indulge us, let's just interview 4. And we'll tailor the questions to probe at those areas of concern.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, so let's do that. It'll save some of your time on
Yeah.
your schedule.
Yeah, I don't think we need to have another committee meeting.
Okay. I was actually hoping for a few more responses. I was a little disappointed that only 5 presented. I think it speaks to the character of BBK. I think some
Yeah,
firms are like.
I think I mentioned to you Rutan and Tucker.
Yep.
An attorney with them, they used to be the VIDs.
Yep.
They're now San Luis Rey, I think. And so they had to drop VID because of the conflict with
Okay.
the Indian water rights issue.
Yeah,
He indicated to me that, like you said, he was kind of questioning whether we were really serious
Yeah.
about putting up BB&K against others.
yep. So that's, yeah, Lieutenant Tucker and.
I got the feeling he wasn't gonna submit a proposal based on that. It was still during the open time
Yeah.
that he approached me, so.
Yep.
I got the feeling from him that he didn't think we were serious.
Yeah. And I don't know what we could do there was nothing in the proposal that made them think, but I can't control what.
I told him we were totally serious. If there
Yeah.
was, the best candidate is who we'd select.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that same firm said the same thing 5 years ago,
I
thinking we
remember
weren't
that.
gonna switch from
I think he and
Jeff
I had that
Scott.
same discussion 5 years ago.
Yeah, but, it's a big investment of time and money for them, and they have to pick and choose which ones they submit proposals for, and they decide what they wanna do. So, Nossaman was the other one. I was hoping Nossaman would, a very well-respected local firm, but they represent a Livenhain, which would have been a potential
Well,
for
they
conflict.
proposed last time.
They did, not this time. One of the reasons we didn't pick Nossaman last time is because they I'll call it a bait and switch right at the end of who the general counsel would be. They had one person representing the firm the entire way, and right at the end of the interview, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I won't be your general counsel, this other person
Yeah,
will
I
be.
think
And we hadn't heard from that other person
We
at all.
wanted the GC that, I think,
Yeah, we wanted Alfred.
Alfred. that's
Yeah,
his
and
name.
Alfred Smith, but he is the general counsel for Livenhain, and their meetings are at the exact same time as us, so he couldn't be two
That's what I was
places
gonna
at the
ask,
same
is there a
time.
conflict because there's only so many.
Yeah, but our request for proposals was clear. Not only do we want you to tell us about your firm, we want you to tell us about who's gonna be our general counsel. And that is not, you don't get to choose every week to send us a different general
Yeah, that's
counsel.
important.
We understand that
is.
people have vacations and they get sick. Nick is here once in a while for Jim, but Jim's here, he's here pretty much most of the time.
He is.
Having said that, he won't be here this Wednesday, but he's got a conflict, but
It's like engineering firms. It's not the firm you do business with, it's the people.
it's the people,
And
right?
it's-
And
It's
you
the
wanna make.
same with all professional consultants.
Yeah, and that's one thing I would clarify, whoever we invite for the interview, bring your general counsel.
Yeah.
Bring the person that's gonna be in that seat. That's who we wanna hear answers from. We don't want a talking head and then hand it off to somebody who we never met in the process. It's
So you
about
mentioned
relationships.
Atkinson,
Yes.
you said Atkinson, they talked about general counsel Anslow or whatever. Did Devane and Pate talk about a general counsel?
Yeah, they mentioned who their general counsel would be. I don't remember who it was. Oh, it was Richard Romero.
You know,
But neither one of those names, Anslow or Richard Merritt?
No,
either you guys?
I don't know Richard. He's a partner at Devaney Pate. I don't know what that means anymore. Some firms have hundreds of partners, so it's not like,
Yeah.
he's
Just
not
means you
one
get
of.
paid a little bit more.
They're
Yeah.
either associates or partners.
So Devaney Pate is DPMC. He's none of the DMP or C. Romero isn't one of on the masthead of the firm. I'm not saying that's good or bad. It just is.
It's probably expensive.
BBK is the same way. They've got so many partners, and I don't know how big firms worked or getting partnerships, but,
So when those conferences, the Aquas and the Casas and stuff that we go to, I see BB&K there, but I don't think I've seen, Procopio I might have seen there,
yeah, you'll tend to see Procopio.
Probably at the,
but I haven't seen any of these other ones, I don't think.
You won't see Procopio as much at water conferences. I've definitely seen
Special
them
districts.
like at CASA, the wastewater, and I think most.
CSDAs or something?
Yeah, maybe CSDA or
Yeah.
CASA, they're a little stronger on the wastewater side than the water
in fact,
side.
Adriana's, I think she's one of the CASA committees.
She
She's
is, and she
Committee chair
mentioned-
of the legal, I think.
She mentions that in her
Yeah.
proposal for either CSDA or CASA.
I think it's CASA.
Yeah. My opinion, at least today, we need probably, most of our work is on the water side. More of our work is on the water side than the wastewater side. A lot of it's right down the middle, like a contract. We need contract review. We don't split that out whether it's water or wastewater. But if there's a water issue, like we had a desal issue with suing the water authority, we needed expertise in water. We don't seem to have the same issues with wastewater, but those worlds are colliding and it's gonna be a different world. And that's a great question to ask in the interview, to see how they respond to, how do you help us manage this world where these two heretofore separate and distinct
one-
worlds.
the one water
This
world.
one water world is gonna change things, and just see how they react to that. But we will help you. When it gets to the interview, we'll prepare lists of questions for your consideration. Feel free to ask whatever questions you want, but we'll help the board with what we think are good probing questions. Okay, so we're not going to have another committee meeting. Anthony and James and I will kind of go back to the mat on 3 and 4, and we'll let you know one way or the other if we can break the tie, and then you can tailor your report out at the, let me ask you that, is that a good way to do it? So I could either agendize something, or we could just do it on the report out. The problem with the report out is you're not really getting a vote.
Yeah, and should that be closed session?
I can ask Gilpin about that. Is
Yeah.
that something we can agendize?
I think it shouldn't be.
I think it could be.
It shouldn't be just the committee report out, that's my opinion.
Yeah, so the committee has to report out, but the depth to which you report out, you could say we meet and just, we talked about the proposals and met with staff, and we'll be discussing it further in closed session or something like that, right?
Yeah, my question is, should that be closed session?
I'll talk to Gilpin, yeah.
I mean, like we were gonna have a second committee in
Yep.
closed session.
Everything here forward is in closed session regarding the solicitation.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
And if we don't do another committee meeting, then the first time we go to the board, other than your obligation to report out that you met as a committee and give a general overview, you don't have to get specific. You don't have to start listing firms in your report out.
But to proceed, do we need to agendize that?
I don't, well, let me hold off on that. I'll talk
Okay.
to Best and Krieger, and I'll suggest to them that we have a closed session to
do that.
discuss legal services, and the report out may not come from your general manager, it may come from our committee.
Just a minute.
Well, I'll be there to help and support in any way you want, but I think that's the best way to cover this as well as we can within the confines of open meeting requirements, so.
Fair enough.
Okay?
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Don't know if we need to close, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.